and welcome to the Glossy Beauty Podcast. I'm Sara Spruch-Feiner.
And I'm Lexi Lebsack.
Later in the episode, we're joined by Indy Lee of namesake brand Indy Lee, and more recently, Indy Lee Botanicals, a new diffusion brand. We talked to Indy about the decision to launch a diffusion brand and why that was something she wanted to do, and sort of the pros and cons of diffusion brands. But first, Lexi, are you excited for The Devil Wears Prada 2?
I am excited. I actually secured my tickets with a group of girlfriends for I think the beginning of May. And so I am excited. Are you going to see it? Are you excited?
Oh my God, yes. I'm very excited about it as well. I have to say, I have watched the first one many a time. Definitely a movie with, lots of memories and nostalgic fondness in my heart. But movies are not just movies anymore. And this time around, I covered the movie for the Pop newsletter last week and looked at some of the collaborations. I specifically spoke to Tangle Teezer, the Hairbrushes, Tweezer Man, and Lancome. But there were many others. I mean, Tresemme has a partnership, and then I didn't even get into fashion. I know Walmart and Target have collections around the movie. And I mean, it's just it's a whole phenomenon because prior to the Barbie movie in 2023, this was not, and that's obviously quite recent. This was not necessarily a thing.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I mean, it's the perfect opportunity for them to really push out as many partnerships as possible because, this is the millennial movie, right? I can't think of, maybe Mean Girls was pretty iconic for millennials, but I can't think of a movie that is touched us all more than this one. And it's been such a long time since the film came out that I know so many people are excited. I did see some sort of negative feedback online, though, with some of the partnerships, specifically fashion ones that were kind of uninspired. So what did you think about the beauty ones? Were they cool?
Yeah, I mean, I think many of them, it's sort of, here's a stiletto on something, here's some black and red. And, when you ask the brands about it, they always talk about being culturally relevant, and it gives them a moment to insert themselves into this moment that people are excited about. I think, for example, Tangle Teezer was saying that it could be a moment to bring new customers in. And I can absolutely see that being true. I definitely don't need my hairbrush to be tied to my favorite movie. But I can see that, if you're on the social media for a film you're excited about or whatever element of culture, it could be music, it could be whatever, and you see that they're partnering with a hairbrush and maybe you don't know that hairbrush brand, but maybe you're in the market for a hairbrush. I mean, all of that makes sense to me. You know what I mean? And then with Lancome, there's a much, much larger marketing machine at play where you and I will have to revisit this because they apparently have some kind of, storyline in the movie. They've done some advertisements that include stars of the movie, Pauline Chalamet, who plays the beauty editor in the movie, and comedian Caleb Heron. There's one with Isabella Rossellini, who, off the top of my head, I'm actually not sure if she's in the movie as well or if she just works because she has worked with Lancome before. And they did not do a branded collaboration. They sort of aligned with the movie to promote their new longevity collection which our colleague Zofia covered a couple weeks ago.
Sure. Yeah, L'Oreal's really sort of digging in deep here for this one. And I'm also really excited to see if there's product placement, to see if L'Oreal, Lancome, if some of these brands pop up in the actual film, which I think could go really, really well for them, or it could come off a little bit canned. So we'll see. We actually have the L'Oreal USA president, Laura Brannick, on the podcast next week to talk about how L'Oreal is activating around this. So big cultural moment here.
And way more to come on that, obviously. And Lexi, you wrote a story this week about peptides in sort of the way that I would say they've been way more familiar to me, which is to say in skincare and not in injectables.
Yes, for sure. There have been so many headlines in the past week or two around peptides. I feel like we're hitting a new tipping point. And that sort of goes back to the FDA's rollback of regulation on injectable research peptides, which we've talked about before. And then, of course, the democratization of GLPs. But it's really interesting because peptide therapy as like a phrase grew in popularity 281% on Google, almost 5% on TikTok, and over 400% on Instagram. I got that stat from Spate. So this just huge explosion. But what's interesting to me and what I wrote about this week is that peptide skincare is experiencing kind of a halo effect. And you and I both know peptide skincare is not new. I think you wrote about this. I think I found an article like way back in 2023 about like a new influx of products coming out. But I talked to a bunch of brands and I actually ended up tracking back this new wave of products to new peptide ingredients that are coming out from ingredient manufacturers. And a lot of them rolled out last year at Suppliers Day in NYC, which is, of course, like the big convention that brands go to look at new cool ingredients that have been created by ingredient companies. So I kind of chronicled that a bit. But yeah, wave of new peptide skincare, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, super interesting. Is it that the technology is changing?
I think that there's a couple things happening. One thing I think is the delivery systems. I think that skincare brands saw the success of past peptides. They saw the success of like K18, for example, that made so much educational content years ago before their acquisition around peptides. And I think that manufacturers are basically playing with delivery systems. So I spoke to a couple people, but I spoke to Wise Beauty's innovation exec, Lauren Lucree, and he told me that basically they just bought and released a new peptide in Wise Beauty's new formula, which is doing very well. But they basically bought one that is different peptides that are linked to hyaluronic acid just to create a better delivery system. So I think that that's one of the main focuses here.
So interesting.
Well, I'm curious about Indy Lee and creating a diffusion line. That's risky business right there. How was the episode? What does she get into?
Yeah, she's super confident in it, and you know she did it with the company that recently acquired her behind her. So she definitely has a bigger operating machine than she might have if she was how perhaps some people think of the brand, which is like a small clean beauty brand, and she does have a bigger sort of machine behind her at this point. But the brand launched at Whole Foods. It's doing very well. She hints a little at what's to come. And she speaks a little bit also about sort of some of the operational things that made it possible to change the price point from the brand as it is. And it's so many things that we don't necessarily think about all the time, but that of course makes such a big difference, such as like not only packaging, but external packaging. And also just the fact that like the economic factors of the world today have led to a demand for this kind of product. She spoke about the fact that her existing retailers are all clamoring to carry this new collection, which I found really interesting because you would think that maybe, or I would have thought that maybe they wanted to avoid, confusion, but they seem to have no concern about, housing them under the same roof, so to speak. So super interesting conversation and possibly, some lessons for others that might be wanting to, think about having more affordable diffusion brands, but perhaps have been scared because there aren't a ton of success stories in that space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, so interesting. Well, I'm looking forward to this one. I've been following her brand for years and years now, so it seems like a smart next steps.
Yeah, she's for sure an OG in the clean beauty space. So here's my chat with Indy. Well, hello, Indy. Welcome to the Glossy Beauty Podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. We're going to get into all the things, but I especially wanted to talk to you about your new diffusion line, which just recently launched at Whole Foods. We're going to get into it, but welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and dive in.
Thank you. So it's just really been a couple weeks. I mean, you'll tell me the exact, date, but tell me about this collection you just launched and how the opportunity came about, why it was the right time, all of that.
I think it starts with the fact that everything for me, I truly believe, is happening like for me, not to me. And so just to take a step back, I started one of the pioneers of the clean beauty movement. I started it from necessity after being diagnosed with a rare brain tumor, being told it could have been something I was putting on my skin. And I got very much dove straight into what is clean beauty? What does it mean for me? How can I create change in this industry, et cetera? Okay, so that was 2008, 2009. Jump forward to 2024 after surviving brain surgery back in 2009. I started to have some additional health issues. One thing led to another, and I had to have 2 back-to-back brain surgeries again because my brain tumor regrew. And it was really the call to action for me that I had to take a look at my life, and that I kind of got away from back to basics, hands in the dirt, creating this line, to the business of self-care and not truly taking care of oneself. And so it was a huge nod for me to take a look at what was happening in my life, how I wanted to show up, all the things. At the same time of having brain surgery, my company was acquired by American Exchange Beauty. So whole new world opened up, and then all of a sudden, let's jump to now and me starting to bring in, what does that mean getting myself back to nature? What does it mean going back into the greenhouse? We're building a farm, really getting back to things that meant so much to me back in 2000, early 2000s up to when I started Indie Lee. And then when we take a look at what was happening in the economy and being now with American Exchange, we realized my purpose was to bring safer beauty to the masses. And what we have now is more of a prestige line, but people couldn't afford that necessarily. And we said, okay, how do we stay true to my mission, which is to empower others to live the healthiest version of their life, in using our products as a way to have that conversation and provide healthier products. And so the idea was born. Why not create a diffusion line that has the same brand ethos that Indie Lee Core, as we call it, has, right? Doing no harm to the environment, doing cruelty-free, no harm to the animals or the inhabitants, and certainly no harm to us humans. And that's kind of where it started, to create a line that was approachable and affordable and still kept that same clean, I don't know what you want to call it, by ethos, right? Brand DNA, philosophy, but bring it to, right. It has the same brand DNA, but just how do we do it at a lower price point so others can afford and still maintain that healthier life?
So it sounds like it sort of started internally. It wasn't like retailer first. Okay.
No, this was really taking a look at what is needed in the marketplace. And if my goal was to bring clean beauty based out of a medical situation, why don't we do it? And so we started to go back, and that's what Botanicals is. It is really a throwback to me going back into the greenhouse, me more time, slower living. We've all seen this. We've gotten so entrenched in this hustle culture, and really what is that doing to our own state of being? And so I'm so excited by Botanicals because it really is that going back to my roots.
So you launched with 4 products, and they're at Whole Foods exclusively to start, and on your own website.
Yes.
And we're going to get into, what makes them different, how they're different and the same from your own brand. But diffusion lines have been sort of like an interesting thing in the beauty industry where many of them have not worked. And I know that, you're aware of this. Like, what were your thoughts on that? How did you think about that? And what did you maybe do differently to sort of perhaps try to avoid some of the pitfalls that you've seen other diffusion lines take, in the past, whoever knows how many, maybe decade or 2 decades even?
Right. I think that's the most important part is that this is really a brand story, right? We're not doing this to build the brand. This is based upon a human story, what I've been going through, and again, taking a look at what everybody's going through at this point in time in the world, people cannot afford to feed their families. People are starting to decide whether or not they're taking vacations. Can they afford to get to work because they have to fill up their cars, right? Like, you're taking a look at what's going on and the very human aspect. This is meeting consumers where they're at. This isn't a brand, let's go and create this. This is based on what's happening in the now and what we're hearing consumers are frustrated with, can't find. So when I have conversations with our consumers, they're like, India, I love your products, but right now I can't afford it. How can I not respond if my whole reason for being was to create healthier choices? It isn't just for those who can afford it.
Is there anything particular that you have seen other diffusion brands do that you were like, maybe this is part of why they haven't worked and I need to do XYZ differently?
I think it always comes down to the why they're doing it, right? Is it because a retailer says, I want to bring in this or that? What is their reason for being? And again, I can't comment on any other brands because I always believe, listen, we all have our own sphere. Like, who am I to comment on it? But I can tell you what our plan is. And our plan is to make clean beauty affordable and approachable. And while doing that, also expanding the Indie Lee community. I started this because I wanted to have a community of like-minded individuals going through transformative change. And again, this allows me to have a much bigger community that we can have these conversations and see, what are people facing? What do they need? But I can't not listen to the existing community since I can't afford them.
You mentioned, hearing from consumers. Where was that feedback about pricing coming through primarily?
It wasn't one place. It's, me being at retailer events, me speaking with consumers on social media, whether I'm at, just an event in real life. I'm very fortunate that I get to go out into the world and go to events and listen. And I think that's where this is really coming from. Not just my listening, but from the American Exchange Beauty, my parent company, really listening to the feedback that we're hearing in the beauty space. Now, you can also take a look at all the metrics and see what's going on in terms of, pulling from Mintel and all the various different places you can get information. And they're all saying the same thing. Consumers are struggling and they still want healthy beauty. So how do we do that?
So like you said, you're seeing this data, you have this idea, you decide to create these 4 products. Tell me just a little bit about these products.
Sure. So they're a routine. They're a complete routine. That does not mean that you have to use just the routine, obviously. Like I always get a good chuckle when they're like, oh, well, so I only have to use your products. Well, no, that would be lovely, but no, that's not how it works. So we have the cleanser, right, which is a gel-based cleanser. It's what I use actually now on a daily basis. I love it. It's not stripping. I love the scent of it. It just does a great job of removing anything from the day. So we have the cleanser, then we have the toner, which is really a mist. So I'd say I use that one throughout the day as just an additional mist of essence to bring hydration to my skin. Then you've got a serum, right? Really nourishing your, the barrier, etc. And then you've got your everyday moisturizer. So you've got beautiful ingredient stories. You've got this Indie Lee complex, which has the squalane, the CoQ10, safflowers. We've got blackberries in there, right? So you've got this beautiful story that is all based on science. So obviously highly effective. And trying to really say, okay, here, you're not sacrificing anything with these products. Here's a routine that you can try or fill in where you might need next, but trying to provide that full cleanse, tone, serum, moisturize.
So at what point did Whole Foods come into the conversation?
Oh my gosh. I think that was last year. We started, oh my gosh, it's like, I can't remember the exact timing. Last year, we had been having conversations with them and we pitched them the idea and they're like, we love it. We're going to take it all into all doors. And now we're starting to say, okay, well, what besides this? So we're looking at what does holiday look like? What does the next, product drop with them look like in addition to like holiday items? It's actually very exciting.
Yeah, it sounds like this is, sort of could be good for anyone, hydrating, nourishing
Absolutely.
collection.
Absolutely.
Okay, but perhaps
100%. Yeah, but again, it's going to grow. It's not just 4 products. It's okay, let's launch the 4 products. Let's get some learning. I'm always believing in testing and seeing what works. Okay. And then you come back. Okay, what's the next? What are we hearing in the marketplace? How do we adjust? What do we bring out next? Are we moving things from core into botanicals? All of those questions I think are really important. What I found fascinating is the moment we launched botanicals, I got phone conversations and emails from our existing retailers. When can we bring this in? So independent boutiques saying, oh my gosh, this is the exact thing that we've been needing and missing. And now we have you, Indy, the name behind it, the person who's, the face of the brand who's saying, I hear you, let's do it. So it's not just a Whole Foods play.
So the cleanser and the toner are $20. The serum and the moisturizer are $25.
Correct.
And tell me a little bit about what enabled you to create these products at a different price point than the core line, where
and the core line is everything from the travel sizes, but let's say $29 or $20 for the lip, all the way to $135. Very different. Our cleansers and toners are $38, and here we're starting at a $19, almost about half the price. So I hear what you're saying. So what we had to look at is what is expensive, and obviously it does come to components a lot of the time. So okay, our core line, a lot of them are in glass components, PCR glass. That's very expensive. It means you have to have a fluted liner with every box. So that's you have the box, and then you have the liner inside of it that protects the glass, right? Then you have the glass. Then let's put in the cost to ship the components to the manufacturer. Then after it's being filled with the product, then it's got to go to the warehouse. Then it's being shipped to, our customers. All that also increases the price when you're dealing with a very, very heavy component. So that was the first thing we took a look at is, okay, I think we need to shift this out of expensive glass, which isn't always clean to make either, into PCR plastic, or where we can, we're looking at aluminum. So what are the substrates that we can use that are lighter, that's less expensive? Obviously, we still take into account sustainability as best we can. But the big thing was being able to do this at a price point. So those were the major shifts.
So a lot of it came down to packaging, really, more so than, the ingredients of what's actually in the, in the juice or the serum or the, whatever. Juice, I guess, more perfume word.
Right. Well, you could call it the goop, the juice.
Yeah, there we go.
Say. Yeah. Same thing for me. Yeah. I gotcha. So the first part was all this, right? The components. Then we take a look at the goop.
Yeah.
And we say, okay, what are the actives we want to use? We're using them. When we do talk about actives and ingredients, right, that are doing the heavy lifting, we're not just doing it at marketing claims. We're doing them at the efficacy levels, right? So we are saying, okay, are there ingredients that are perhaps less expensive than maybe some of the more potent actives that are out there, or things that are coming on the market, which can be more expensive? So what can we do at an affordable price point? So, but without ever sacrificing safety and efficacy. So you're still going to make sure that we're not doing things with the phthalates, which are hormone disruptors. We're not going to use parabens. We've got our list. We always, formulate to the Credo and above, like EU standards, etc. So we're not giving up on that, but perhaps we might not be able to use XYZ ingredient in order to keep it at this price point. So we're taking a look at that. Also, clinicals. We have a lot of those on the proper line. That's very expensive. Okay, can we do clinicals, or maybe we have to go to consumer perception testing? Still valid, but maybe it's not the tool testing. So we're having those conversations also when we take a look at what is the price structure.
It's so interesting to me what you said about potentially transitioning products from the core line into botanicals. Is that something that might be happening, or you're considering? How would that work?
You know what? We consider everything. I think that's a whole bigger conversation that brand will have, but I don't think it's a hard and fast no. Obviously, we're going to take a look at what products do we need to now add to botanicals. and what's happening in the marketplace, and then be nimble enough to shift with it.
Yeah.
But there aren't any hard and fast rules that are happening definitively yet. But I could see it happening for sure. I mean, certainly as we're talking about products coming out onto the line after one that's launching in May, those are going to be in the botanical lineup. They're not in the core lineup.
You're saying just that the new products launching in May are launching into botanicals rather than...
So May, we're launching something in the core.
Okay.
But then in August, September, we're launching in botanicals, some products in botanicals.
Okay. So botanicals launched at Whole Foods on February 24th, so less than 2 months ago. Tell me about sort of like what the reaction has been.
I would be remiss. Actually, I'd be lying to tell you I wasn't very nervous when it all came out. I mean, I was nervous. This is a big move.
Yeah.
And you don't know how I was so excited and honored by the feedback we got across the board. I mean, immediately retailers, when can I take this? This is brilliant. I love it. Oh my God, yes. Creators, Indy, this is fantastic. How do I get on the list? I love that you're doing this. I've got, it's been across press. It's been absolutely phenomenal. All the concerns that I originally had went away upon launch.
And I would love to come back to the retailers because that's so interesting too. Because I think sometimes you think that, some retailers sort of bucket themselves as more prestige and a higher price point. It's really interesting that they would want to retail both. But have you been able to, and I know it's really only been such a short time period so far, but have you been able to talk to sort of like Whole Foods customers or get that sort of more direct feedback from people that are purchasing and using it?
Yeah. And it's been, obviously, once we launched, obviously you needed people to purchase or get it to try it. Yeah. But the response, again, has been nothing but positive. People are absolutely loving it. They're like, oh my gosh, this cleanser. I had a very, very large influencer FaceTime me over the weekend saying, this is incredible. Oh my God, I cannot believe you did this. He's like, I'm using this. So it's been nothing but positive. But I think it's because we were so strategic, and I really have to give a lot of love to the, product development team that really helped usher this beautiful line into existence. So I think I can't take the credit. I've got this phenomenal team, and it's only going to get even better. American Exchange just hired their first marketing CMO.
Oh, wow.
So I think this is just going to be an even more powerful time for all the AAX brands, but I'm very excited for Indy now.
And when you talk about sort of how strategic they were, like what did that look like? Like what are the decisions that they made that you obviously were part of making that you think are allowing for this positive reaction now?
I think it is the constant conversations about where does it belong? What does the pipeline look like? What is doable when you take ops into what are the componentry? What can we do? I mean, this has been every part of the team involved in buying off on or signing on to, let's create this line into Elite Botanicals. Everything from the creative down to ops to, social media. What are we saying? So it hasn't been just one thing. It's just been all of us working in tandem to launch this incredible new, next chapter, let's call it, for Indy Lee.
How did you guys think about sort of like who the customer might be for this, what they would want, how that might be different from the traditional Indy Lee customer as you guys were in development for these products?
It always goes to listening to our consumers, our existing consumers, and what they need. And so this is taking a lot of our existing consumers that are just unable to purchase the core line due to a price sensitivity. So there's that. But we're also taking a look at what does beautiful skin look like? What does that mean to people? What is confidence in their own skin? And when we took a look at Whole Foods, these are people who already understood living towards a cleaner life, right? It's not 100%. I am not one of those people. I don't do 100% of anything. But people who've already started to understand or buy into that slower, healthier, cleaner life. We're providing them with the skincare they love where they're already shopping. people aren't necessarily going everywhere separately to shop for things anymore. So it's also taking a look at, how do people shop now? And people are trying to this is why Target has a, food part of their, many of the stores. So people can go in and do all their shopping in one place. And our demographic tends to be people who are looking for healthier options, but still want that efficacy. Where are they shopping? They're also shopping at Whole Foods. So I can't say that it's one core demographic, but it's those people who are looking for cleaner options or wanting to make the shift into a cleaner option and perhaps don't have that luxury price point that they can hit.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like...
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm explaining it correctly.
Yeah, and it's fine if you don't have an answer to this, but I feel like, speaking of Target, we often hear about like, a busy mom trying to, do it all, that kind of sort of archetype. And I'm wondering if like you learned anything about like who that Whole Foods shopper is, especially for beauty.
Yeah, I think that the learning is still very early on for us.
No,
we're just getting first months.
Yeah.
So I can only go on what we're hearing on social, what I'm hearing out in the market, those type of things, because it would be unfair. I'm not standing in Whole Foods every day talking to people. I am a Whole Foods shopper and certainly love seeing my stuff on the shelf. But yeah, it is that it's usually the mom who's shopping for her family, who's busy, really busy, and is trying to find a way to simplify her life. We're seeing a lot of that. There's also a large component of women like me who are 45 plus. I'm 54. I don't want to skew myself that young anymore. But we're looking at that more, let's say more mature, who is trying to figure out and slow her life down and what does she actually need, and wants to be smart with how she spends her money, how she spends her time, and being a little bit more mindful of it. And I know that speaks to a psychographic, not necessarily a demographic, but that's really who this is too. And I'm hoping I'm answering your question.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm very excited to see sort of like what you guys are launching next, and how you're sort of expanding the brand. Like, are you thinking about it in terms of skin concerns? I know you mentioned holiday, but is there anything you can tell us about sort of how you plan to grow botanicals?
I think it would be remiss if we just talk about our face.
Okay. Okay. No, that's...
Who knows where it goes from there?
Okay.
But I don't see botanicals as just being this for-product play. Not given the reaction that we're getting from everybody saying, at this moment in time, this is exactly what we needed from the person we trust. And I think that's also part of it. And I hate to make this about me because that's not who I am, but I've built this community on trust and being honest that I'm not perfect and what I'm doing to slow myself down based upon very real health and life things that have happened that I think a lot of us can see themselves in. I'm very honest about having 7 autoimmune diseases. We know many Americans either have autoimmune or know somebody who has autoimmune. Talking about those things, talking about the environmental role. I think that's just as part of the community that we're bringing along on the ride, let's call it.
100%. And the core brand does not have body care, correct?
We have the coconut citrus scrub, which was the first product I ever created in my kitchen, going back to 2008. We used to have body and core. And then we pulled back. First of all, there's always the problem when you're the first to market. So we started with body. When I first started, by the way, when I mentioned that it's a nod to my throwback to my back to basics, when I first started Indie Lee, it was called the Botanical Collection. So just, again, there's that little nod. But I started with body. Yeah, I started with body. And then went into more skincare face focused. But, we always had some body products. But again, I think we were too early on in bringing it, right? People were focusing on here and weren't thinking of the rest of the body, despite me saying, this is such a small amount if your skin's your largest organ. Well, now people are starting to take it into account. And so we're like, okay, we hear you.
Amazing. Tell me about sort of what you guys have done to get the word out about the brand, market it, introduce it to people, tell people, this exists to begin with. You mentioned introducing creators to it, how they're playing into it, anything.
Sure. So I would say right now it's even gearing up more than it was because, like I said, we just hired a CMO who's really going to be creating this 360 flywheel, which I cannot wait. But what we have done is obviously influencer mailing. So we had a very large influencer mailing, creator mailing, which was the 4 products. And because I like making full circle moments, every one of those boxes had, 2 packets of seeds. So using ingredients that were in our products that, they were using, and then little seed pots that were compostable with little seed pods so that they can do everything to start growing their own, right? And really talking about how important being closer to nature is. So we did that mailing, explaining the why. We've done a ton of email campaigns setting out. We're doing obviously the digital ads, all the things that you would expect, like the email marketing, the SMS, the outreach, the social posts, the changing over the website, videos, brand videos, all those things in conjunction with launching at Whole Foods.
And has Whole Foods helped support that in any way?
Obviously, yes and no. Yeah. Typically with Whole Foods, it really is the brand that's saying they're bringing opportunities to us, and how can we collaborate with them on these and going forward, looking at eventing, going into store, me doing more in-store events. So those are things that we're starting to look at now.
Okay, so we might see you popping up at Whole Foods.
You might see me popping up at Whole Foods in the near future.
Coming months. So okay, so I'm so bad at math.
I should say press. No, so I also forgot. Obviously, there's a whole press component too. So obviously, the podcast, the press releases, the articles, the interviews, all those things. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I almost forgot that part, which was huge.
You're fine. And of course, so about maybe 5-ish months until we see the line expand, but expansion is already on the horizon and planned.
Yes.
Amazing.
For me, it's really about this journey that I've been going on in real life and in real time, and sharing it with our community, and realizing that so many people are going through that same thing that I'm going through. Maybe they don't have the brain tumors like I have, but there's enough health issues, whether it's autoimmune, whether it's cancer, any chronic illness, anything. People are going through so much right now. And so I think being very honest and transparent, and more importantly, vulnerable, which is not always easy to be as a founder, but really sharing the ups and downs and what I'm going through and have been going through, how this really started to prompt rethinking, or not rethinking because it's always been, but sharing the ingredient safety portion and why I even started this line in the first place back in 2008, 2009.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Indy. Congratulations on this exciting new chapter. I am excited to continue to watch it grow. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Glossy Beauty Podcast. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. It really does help us out. And of course, visit glossy.co/beauty for even more coverage of the beauty industry. Bye.